Well, as you can see, the similarities with all these stories is quite frightening, and the methods they use, attacking the sexuality of women, the dignity of women, the families of women, and to have somebody like Galina leave her country to go and live in Latvia is quite really deep offense to anybody, seriously. I really worry about you, especially in Mexico, because I know the challenges are huge. I'm hoping that you will be safer in Latvia, and I'm sure you'll be safer in Sweden. Keep our fingers crossed. Well, I don't want you to sleep, so we are going to play ball, and we want some lights, and we want the ball. I'm going to try my luck at throwing this ball. Anybody wants to ask a question, and I'll try to get the ball, or has a comment, or wants to do any... Oh, that's easy. Oh, good. Please
Hello.
go ahead.
Thank you for a wonderful seminar. My name is Christine Olsen. Half of my professional life I've been a journalist. Half of it I've been working with International Development Corporation on freedom of expression. So we support media organizations and media associations, among others, bloggers and democracy workers. And one trademark for the journalist sector, I would say that there is a lack of mobilization from the industry. If you compare, like Annette Novak said earlier, that this is an issue of justice. It's an issue of norms, it's an issue of culture, but also of justice. And if you compare to the women's movement or the trade associations, they go out and mobilize over the sectors to address such issues, but we don't see that in the journalist sector. And that it's like it's the civil society who should take care of the journalist. And it can be related to what Jessica Aro said earlier about the ethics of always talking for the public, not for yourself. But do you see any solutions on this? Do you see any ways that the media itself could actually find solution and demand solutions from the justice sector, for example? And then, because media are the best to follow up if they're really implemented or not later on.
The thing is, before you go to the justice sector, you have to have legislation that would allow you to go to the... And I'm not aware that in most countries there is this legislation. You know, I'm sitting here coming from Lebanon, and I just came back from the Middle East. It's really very clear to me of two worlds, two lives, two sets of problems. Initially, we're all the same, we're all human, we all suffer the same, we cry the same, we feel pain the same. It is just that what really is the worry, and I think maybe my colleagues share this, we're not going forward with the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, with the way we respect and treat journalists. This is extremely sad because we were going well, we were doing well. It's just the last 5 years, it's with the change of morality around the world, not only for journalism, but if you look at politics at large, it seems to me that we have might is right. You see states walking into other states, waging wars. Mr. Putin is in Syria. You know, we again, this story of engaging the public, engaging people, I think is very important. What do you think, Galina?
You know, it's a fun fact, but let's do justice. It's the favorite phrase of Mr. Putin. When somebody complains about political prisoners or about pressure on freedom of speech, he said, okay, let's go to the court. But Russia does not have independent court. So in Russia, we have no chance. You know, I have one example. Russian court decide to put to convict main Russian oppositional leader Alexei Navalny. And international court reverse this verdict, and they will do nothing. They just do not want to fulfill their international obligations.
Yes, it's interesting. I think we've heard enough about Swedish support or lack of it, or whatever you call it, for journalists. I want to ask you, actually, Laura, about the support you have from the government, for you, people like you, journalists.
Well, the Mexican government created a special prosecutor's office to look into denunciations of journalists, harassment, and murder. However, after 6 years in operation and having opened 798 investigations of aggressions against both men and women, it has only won 2 convictions. Artículo 19 documents aggressions against reporters in Mexico approximately every 22 hours. It has recorded that from the year 2000 to date, 99 journalists have been murdered in Mexico. The government created protection mechanism for journalists. They included limited security protocols like panic buttons, an emergency hotline, and in extreme cases, they have provided bodyguards for persons under threat. In the last 2 years, in the last 2 years, there have been 232 journalists, 82 of them women, who sought and received this protection from the Mexican government. But what happens when the aggressor is the Mexican state itself? Does it assail and protect us at the same time? According to a CIMAC report, 73% of aggressors against female journalists are state agents.
Shocking.
Federal forces, public servants, officials. Mexico is saddled with a corrupt bureaucracy government that has not undertaken investigations or prosecuted justice on behalf of these reporters. To this day, the 14 cases of murdered women from the last 10 years remain unpunished.
That is truly shocking, isn't it? Oh, God. I just want to say about journalists helping themselves and helping others. I think you're a very good example by insisting on publishing, by insisting not to be afraid. You know what will happen if we're all afraid, if we all retire to ourselves and don't engage and don't prove that we're passionate about what we believe and what we do? It will be a very sad world. It will be a world with no justice, with no democracy, with no life whatsoever. We'll all be like maybe some countries like Mexico or maybe the Russian state or whatever it is. I really urge all my fellow journalists to stand for themselves and to stand for each other. Do you agree with me? Yes, okay. So vote of confidence. Anybody else in the audience would like to? Yes, we have, again? Lovely, okay, you have to throw it. And let's see, oops, good work.
Hello, my name is Jenny Rönngren. I work for a feminist online news publication here in Sweden. And I think that it's very important what you're speaking about, the safety, and how can, I would like to ask the question for each of you, how do you, how have you found safety for yourselves? But also, Laura, in Mexico, I know that you work very much in networks of journalists just with a gender perspective. En redes de mujeres.
Or are you working on yourself?
You have networks of journalists?
Well, in Mexico, there are a handful of colleagues in some parts of the country who have created protection networks or collectives. But what happened with those experiences? Nevertheless, most lack both funding and media support. And many women journalists received miserable salaries and lack both healthcare and life insurance. For there to be true protection for our professions, its work conditions must first be improved, and there needs to be a commitment on the part of the media to get involved in its security protocols. But the mass media doesn't care what happens with the journalists. and with the women journalists,
Well, maybe we can get some money from the lady here and give it to the Mexican journalists, because you said you fund some journalists, so here you have somebody who was, yes.
One question to
Okay,
follow up.
okay. Anybody else? Sorry.
But do you think that the media should be responsible to also document these things?
Of course, they're responsible. You know, sometimes we use the wrong medium for the media. I think we should use everything available to us, and I think maybe my colleagues agree with me. And the effort should be concerted. It should be a group from all over the world, because if each one of us does something, people are listening to many things, are doing too many things. We have to highlight it, and we are the ones who can highlight it. Okay, thank you. We have one question. Oops, fantastic. We're going to have a football team after this.
My name is Agneta Söderberg Jakobsson, and I work with Fojo Medieinstitutet. I'm a program manager, but also a gender advisor. And I think that all of us now, we're struggling with this issue. What can be done? What can be done in practice after having heard all your stories that are really touching and really strong? And I think it was the foreign minister that mentioned that this thing with maybe having some kind of a mechanism that adopted journalists, female journalists that are harassed and have a difficult situation, could be something. I mean, to give lots and lots of support to these individuals. Would that be something that would help you in your individual cases? Would that be a good mechanism and something worth putting effort into? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's a good question and a good comment. However, we need to verify, we need to identify what needs to be done. And this is, I think, this group of people are already helping shape the conversation and shape the future of this conversation. So I hope your organization will be working hard to produce something that we can all share. Do you agree with this?
Totally agree, but frankly, what do we need? It's moral support. Because nobody can be in my skin, and nobody can know all the situation. Inside Russia, outside Russia.
Do you have the support?
Yeah, I have the support from independent media managers and journalists in Russia. There are a few of them, but I have very warm support for our efforts.
But are they there in public? Do they dare go out and support you in public? Or are they?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because
okay.
I was very much surprised. It was a big a conference in Moscow called Media Makers, and all top managers speaking about advertising, about spreading, using news channels of distribution. All of them mentioned Medusa and me as a successful project. This is professional success, so I'm happy to hear it. But speaking about safety, frankly, Latvia is a very safe country. So it's some kind of, yes, it's not physical, it's some kind of moral suffer. But as I said, it's okay.
Anna, do you get the support?
I do,
part of our job.
and speaking of the safety issue, I mean, I come from a pretty large media company, and we have safety mechanisms and people you can call and all that, but the main thing here is not to be alone with your fears,
yes.
and to have the support of people you can speak with whenever you need. That makes you feel more secure and more determined. So I'm all with you there.
Do you get any kind of training, safety training? Because I think that's pretty much needed. Maybe if it doesn't exist, we should maybe start a program of safety to our colleagues. I'm not aware of any in London or anywhere else. So I don't know. Do you have it in your media organization?
Not to that extent. We talk about we have like a small course that all the media manager has been through to talk about what would be signals of things that are going wrong and what are you going to do in that situation. So in that sense, yes, but not something very extensive.
Very interesting. I'm very happy to take, okay, Oh, suddenly there is, okay.
Democracy, it's not all important to have international support, but even international pressure on that government.
Yes, I agree. The lady in the lovely scarf.
Thank you. My name is Gunilla Ivarsson, and I'm coming from an organization that is global, and it's called International Association of Women in Radio and Television. We have members in more than 50 countries, mostly in Africa and Asia, and we are not that well known in Sweden. But our experience is that the global solidarity is so important, and it's been more easy these days to work since we have internet and everything. And when we have our conferences, we also deliver security training to people coming to our conferences, the women journalists doing that. But it's also a matter of costs, because it's rather expensive. And I also want to highlight that we are talking about what are the media houses doing. And these days, with a changing media landscape, more and more journalists, and I would say even more female journalists, are freelancers. And they don't have the support of a media house or an employer or someone a working environment with other people. And I think that's important when you are addressing these things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you very much. One more comment. I heard one. Yes, please. Can you kindly throw it? Ooh, ooh. Well, nearly there.
Thank you for
Can I ask you to be brief, because we're running out of time? Thank you.
I'm working for the same magazine as my colleague here, Jenny Röngren, and I was thinking about how can we encourage young women to dare to pursue this profession as journalists, knowing what they might be able to face, what they have to face.
Yes, well, this is a very interesting question. I think we should also remember that journalism is passing through very difficult financial means, and really worldwide, journalists are not being able to be awarded. I know in England we have a huge problem. The BBC has cut down its really financial commitments. It has closed some services around the world. Also, The Guardian is screaming, that Sunday Times, The Times, all these, because of the lack also of advertisement, and it's a serious problem. But I tell you, if you have it in you, if you have this passion, the bug that we all have on stage, it's very difficult to stop you. But I think journalism is really a very, very honorable kind of work to do, but it's becoming not only dangerous, but it is becoming a job that you are paid very little, and sometimes you're not even appreciated. It's very sad what's going on in the world these days. Nationalism, the rise of the far right, etc. And all these things you would think would need more journalists, more write-ups, more work. Unfortunately, it's not the case. I want to thank you all, and we have one more speaker. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.